And today we're going to talk about parenting with compassion and raising compassionate children. My husband and I were joking this morning about, I said, hey, you want to switch jobs today? I'll work on your job and you can do my job. And he laughed and he said, I think I was compassionate with our kids once. But we were joking because we definitely used a lot of compassion when we were raising our kids. Our kids are 25 and 28. I have a background in child development and psychology and have worked with all ages of kids. And I'm really excited to be part of this series and be able to offer these workshops for you all. As we get started, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what Young and Healthy does. Young and Healthy is a 32-year-old direct healthcare services organization in Pasadena. And what we have done for since our beginning is to provide direct healthcare services to children through all volunteer medical professionals who see our kids in their offices pro bono. So whatever children are in need of, we provide that, whether it's glasses or orthopedics or pediatrics, mental health services, you name it, we provide it. That continues. And then we also, for the last, 8 years, I think now, since the beginning of Obamacare, it's got to be more than that. We have been providing insurance enrollment and support services to families. We have an expert on our staff who helps families to get enrolled in the health insurance that is the best fit for them. And then we support families through it. We help them navigate it because it's not always easy to navigate your health insurance. And then the education part is really our prevention services, because we know that the best way to take care of our kids is to prevent them from needing healthcare services. And so through understanding that emotional well-being and physical well-being are very, very tightly woven together, we have been providing trauma-informed care and mindfulness and these types of parent education programs for parents throughout Pasadena. I'm going to provide you with a link and ask you to sign in a little bit, but I have to grab the link first. But just so that you know, we are still hard at work. We are still doing what we do best, which is to meet the needs of the families in our community. To that end, we have started working on a project called Toma, which helps families to access the earned income tax credit. So what we actually do is file your taxes with you. We file your taxes for free and help make sure that you are getting your relief and your stimulus. And we also then make sure that if you qualify, you can get the earned income tax credit, which can be up to almost about $7,000. So we're not talking about a little bit of money. The reason that this is such an important part of what Young and Healthy's mission is that it helps to meet by relieving the stress through having that extra cash in your pocket. We are able to help you to improve your family's health, overall health and well-being, right? Less stress, less poverty, less improved family health, which means that families are then able to focus on their families. Parents are able to focus on their children, which improves the overall outcomes for our kids. So we feel really strongly about the importance of this program. Tax season is coming. I will continue to give you information about this, but you can always reach out to Young and Healthy for more information. All right, we're going to start with a breathing exercise. This is one of the easiest breathing exercises, I think, because it's easy to remember. There's not a lot that you have to remember or to walk yourself through. It's a simple breathing exercise that can really help us to focus, to get calm, to help us to practice the pause. We're going to talk more about practicing the pause in a minute, but it's super simple. All you do is breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, and then hold your breath for a count of 7. Exhale through your mouth for a count of 8. So I'm going to walk you through this. We're going to count it through. So do it along with me, please. We're going to do it through twice. Take a deep breath in through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more time. In through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hopefully what that will do for you is help to calm your brain and lower your heart rate and get you to a place where you've now taken that pause so that you can be more compassionate, right? What is compassion? Compassion motivates people to go out of their way to understand the physical, mental, or emotional situation of others and themselves, right? We often refer to compassion as being sensitive. That we understand, right? We're kind of sensitive. We put ourselves in your shoes, so to speak. And relationship and connection are really key to compassion, right? What it really does is it helps us to separate the problem that that needs to be solved, perhaps a behavior or getting something done, or how we're going to maybe come up with our family's routine. And we put that second to understanding what the person involved is experiencing, right? So before we implement, before we try to problem solve, before we maybe give consequences, we stop and consider how our kid is feeling before we move on. Because we don't want the problem to become more important than the person, right? There's a human being at the other side of that. And we want to make sure that we understand compassionate parenting helps us to see our child's view of the world, right? And I like to say, our kids are kind of new here, right? They're kind of new. They haven't had all the experience that we've had. They're still navigating and trying to learn how to make their way in the world. There's a lot of adults telling them what to do. There's a lot of expectations that maybe they don't understand yet. And compassionate parenting helps us to take that step back and remember that our kids are feeling a little bit overwhelmed and to look at the world through their perspective. There are 5 components of positive parenting, compassionate parenting, that we're going to talk about as we go through this series. Today's the first day of our series about compassionate parenting, positive parenting. Awareness of emotions, connecting with our child, listening to our child, naming emotions, and finding solutions. Okay, those are the 5 things. Today, we're just going to talk about what the overall view of compassionate parenting. What is compassionate parenting? Like, what does that really entail? So we're going to go deeper into each aspect as the weeks go by. But for today, we're doing an overview. Really, compassionate parenting asks us to press the pause button, right? Compassionate parenting calls us to take the time to sit down and understand, right? To kind of get what's going on for our kid before we jump in with solving the problems. And this gets our kids to feel like, oh my gosh, they're listening to me, which makes them more open to listening to us. So the other way to say this is seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? We are, as parents, and I'm so guilty of this myself as a parent, I want to jump in and make sure you get my point, right? You understand where I'm coming from. You know what has to go down. I have had a lot of experience. I can tell you how this should go, right? But what I have a tendency to forget is I've got to take that step back and understand where they're coming from. What's their perspective? What's their experience of this situation? And it's okay if it's different than mine. And then we start from there. It doesn't mean that we don't coach and influence our kids, right? I'm not saying that we let our kids direct their lives from the time they're born until, forever, because we still have to be their coach. We still have to be the greatest influence that they have. But we can do that even after we've listened first, okay? It doesn't take away your authority to be compassionate. It doesn't take away your place in the family as coach, as parent. It just means that you're compassionate about how you manage and navigate. If you've had a compassionate manager in your life, if you've worked for someone who manages with compassion, you understand then, think about how that feels, right? When you work for someone who's kind of a taskmaster, doesn't really care about how you feel, they're just worried about you getting the job done. It has a whole different feeling than someone who understands how you're feeling and wants you to feel good about what you're doing, right? And we want to be that compassionate manager, right? One of the first things that we can do in order to be, when we're being compassionate, is to make sure that we understand that they know what we want them to do. Are we being clear? Quick little story that I like to tell when I talk about making sure that we're being clear, that our kids understand really what we want them to do, is a little boy and his dad, and the little boy says, "Can I go outside and play?" And the dad says, "Sure, you can go outside and play, but please don't go around the corner, stay within, these boundaries." And the kid goes, "Got it." Goes outside, within seconds, he's around the corner. Dad brings him back in and says, "Listen, I told you not to go around the corner." Day 2, dad said, "Kid, can I go outside?" Dad, "Yep, you can go outside, but please remember from yesterday, don't go around the corner." Kid goes, "Gotcha, Dad." Off he goes. First thing he does, zip right around the corner. Day 3, he's, Dad, can I go out and play? Dad goes, "Yes, you can, but listen, the last 2 days I told you could go outside and play, but don't go around the corner. And you still went around the corner." And the dad says, "So today, if I let you go outside, you have to promise me you won't go around the corner. Do you have any questions?" The little boy looks at his dad and says, "Yes." "What's a corner?" So it wasn't that the little boy was being naughty. Was he being disobedient? No, he just didn't understand the directions, right? So we have to back up and make sure that our kids we're clear about what we're saying to them. So we can do that often by telling them what we want rather than what we don't want. Our children, especially depending on their age, cannot make the leap from don't do something to then understand what you intend them to do, what you really are expecting them to do. The example I use often is when we tell our kids, because I've been at a lot of schools, I've worked at a lot of schools, and you hear all the time adults telling children, "Don't run indoors, don't run." Well, you and I probably know that what we're really trying to say is, please walk, right? We want you to walk inside. Our kids can't always make that connection. They can't make that leap from don't run. Oh, that means you want me to walk. So we can help them out by being more clear and say, "Please walk inside." Clear instructions are more easy to follow than instructions that are not so easy to follow or not so clear, excuse me. Like be quiet. Well, what we're really trying to ask them to do is use a softer voice, right? Or stop crying. That's a different message, right? It's okay to cry. So we can just really think about what we're saying and how our words really matter like that. We don't talk like that. Well, how do we talk? We use kind words. Okay. So that's one of those things you can think about. The other thing to think about in terms of being compassionate is to understand that most of the time when kids are acting out, it can be explained in terms of growth stages and unmet needs. Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time. We should first look at, is this appropriate behavior for this age? When a 2-year-old throws a tantrum, we go, that's because they don't know how to communicate. They don't have the words. They're feeling overwhelmed and they don't know what to do, right? That's most often why like a typical 2-year-old would have a tantrum. That is a developmental stage that's appropriate, right? That's appropriate behavior for their developmental stage. However, when a 7-year-old is having the same tantrum, it might be a result of unmet needs, right? I need something, I need connection, and I don't know how to tell you. And so we have to look a little deeper, right? But it's true. Most Kids do not misbehave just to get on our nerves. I know it's hard to believe that when you're at home and living with them and watching what's going on. It's real. Sometimes, that's not to say they never do. Most often they don't. Most often it's because they are in a stage or they have unmet needs. So when we focus on the behavior, the brain's going to find another way to get that need met. If it's an unmet need or something that needs to be learned, they're going to find another way to act out to let you know, I still have this need. Maybe I'm not allowed to cry and sit on the floor and throw a tantrum or kick the door, but I still have this need. We haven't addressed it yet. And I still don't know how to verbalize it. So we have to look at what's beyond the behavior. Is it development? Is, because as I mentioned, that 2-year-old having a tantrum, developmentally appropriate. A 2-year-old, a 4-year-old who's biting, unacceptable behavior, still it can be considered developmentally appropriate. Is it discipline? Is it really just that this kid needs better discipline? Is it really just that we haven't set the parameters, right? That we haven't set the boundaries? Or are they in distress? Are they feeling like I am overwhelmed with feelings? I am overwhelmed with what's going on around me, and I don't know how to verbalize that. I don't know how to communicate that to you as the adult. Some things that are going on, right? We know that some things that can happen is that maybe our sleep is affected. You don't remember things as well. You don't feel as productive, shorter attention span, smaller window of tolerance, right? We have less patience. And that can all be because we're feeling a little overwhelmed. Our kids get overwhelmed by a lot of things. The pandemic is kind of overwhelming for all of us, right? We have to continue to take that into consideration, that a lot of what's going on around us is because we're in uncharted waters, right? We're in unfamiliar territory and we're trying to figure it out. What other kind of things can we see in our kids that would be considered communication, that they are trying to tell us something is going on below the surface? Might be aggression or hitting, some regressive behaviors. Often our kids, maybe our 3-year-old who was potty trained has gone back to not being completely potty trained, or having more accidents. Or maybe a child who did not have any separation issues is now having a hard time separating, right? Withdrawing or demanding. Somatic complaints are physical complaints, physical ailments complaints. So tummy aches and headaches. We see a lot of tummy aches and headaches when kids are overwhelmed and having a hard time. They often have trouble learning new skills, or social skills, or maybe they're tantruming. These are just some examples of what we can see in kids when they're feeling a little overwhelmed and need our compassion. They need us to look below the behavior and figure out what's going on. And then we have to also kind of keep in mind that about 70 to 80% of communication is nonverbal. So if we're going to be compassionate, we need to make sure that we're being compassionate from head to toe. It can't just be our words, right? If I say, that's okay, we'll get through this, we'll work it out. Or if I say, yeah, that's fine, we'll figure this out. Same exact words, 2 very different messages, right? So we have to be aware of our facial expressions, our tone of voice, whether or not we are the intensity of our response, our posture and gestures. I will say, my daughter tells me all the time that everything I'm thinking is written on my face, no matter how much I try. If I say something that doesn't match my facial expression, it's my kids know, right? They call me on it. They're like, okay, that's not really how you feel, Mom. Tell us how you really feel. And so we have to be aware of that when we're talking with our kids and expressing compassion. Our voice has to be compassionate. The way our posture has to be compassionate. So that's another thing to think about. And then remembering that our kids are having their own experiences, right? They've interpreted what's happened perhaps differently than we have based on their experience. Remember, they're new here. It's okay. They're allowed to have their interpretation of their of what's happening, right? They're allowed to look around and go, yeah, this is different for me than it is for you. And that's okay. Our brains are prediction machines, and we predict what's going to happen next based on what we already know. And if we have, a small amount of knowledge, a small amount of information, maybe the interpretation is going to be different. And so they're okay. Or maybe something that you didn't think would make them sad, did make them sad. And so then we get confused. Like, why did that make you sad? I don't understand. We can ask, right? We can then talk with our kids and ask them, but they get to have their own experience. And these are some questions that we can use to I'm sorry, the word is not coming to me, but these are some questions we can use in order to figure out, am I being compassionate, right? Am I being compassionate? Is what I'm about to say kind? Pretty simple, right? Is what I'm about to say kind? This is where pressing that pause button comes in, right? In order to stop and ask these questions, we have to be willing to pause. We have to be willing to stop and think about what we're about to say. Is what I'm about to say helpful? Is this going to help the situation? Or is this going to make it worse? Right? Is what I'm about to say going to poke the bear? Or is what I'm about to say going to help us figure this out? Is what I'm about to say true? Often we do this as parents. That's it. I'm throwing all the toys in the trash. I'm tired of everything. Nobody cleaned up their rooms. Everything's going in the garbage. Is that true? Are we actually going to follow through on that? Is that something we're about to do? Right? When we use other people as threats to our kids, oh, that monster is going to come get you, right? Or I've heard so many parents say, oh no, that's going to happen. It's not true. Don't say it, right? That is what I'm about to say necessary. Do I need to say this, or am I just saying it because I either want to get that dig in, or I want to just talk because I know stuff? So is what I'm about to say necessary? These are some questions that you can ask yourself when you press that pause button before you respond, because often these questions, the opposite of these questions happen when we're being reactive, right? Boom, I'm just going to do it right. First thing that comes to my brain. But if we take that pause button or press that pause button and respond instead of react, we'll be a lot more successful as compassionate parents. As our kids get older, when they come and they want to just talk, we can ask them, do you need me to get involved? Are you looking for advice, or do you just want me to listen? Right? So many times our kids just want us to listen. Also, so many times, if we let our kids just talk, they figure it out on their own. They come up with their own solution. I do that too, right? Don't we all do that? We kind of, hey, let me run something past you. And then we talk it out. And before the other person even has a chance to respond, we're like, okay, I figured it out. I hear myself now, right? Let me just bounce this off of you. So as our kids get older, we can ask them that question, right? Do you need me to get involved? Do you want some advice? Because maybe they'll say, nope, I want to handle this on my own. Or just listen. You want me to just listen? I'll just listen. I'm good with that. Another question we can ask when our kids come to us is, how can I support you right now? Right? What do you need from me right now? How can I help you? And we don't want to ask this in an impatient, like, okay, what do you need from me? How can I support you right now? We want to ask this I hear that you're working this through. Tell me how I can support you. Is there a way that I can support you right now? Okay. That's being compassionate. That's giving them the room to work on the problem themselves. And that helps build those executive function skills, those prefrontal cortex skills, so that they can become effective problem solvers on their own. And then we can say, I'm here with you. I'll just listen. I'll listen. I'll sit and I'll listen. I'll stand here and I'll listen. We can be together. I'm going to just listen. I'm here with you and I will listen. I'm going to throw in one more thing when it comes to being present and making sure that we tell our kids we're going to listen. That means we actually have to listen, which means we have to put away our devices, because we're as guilty as that, guys, as our kids can be sometimes, right? We can be. Put away our devices, turn away from the computer, really give them your full and undivided attention. That's when our kids know oh, this person really is listening to me. Other times things kind of get a little bit out of control. And maybe you kind of, and you're starting to notice that the conversation is escalating, and it's getting maybe a little bit more contentious or a little bit uncomfortable or frustrating. It's okay to say, hey, you know what? We're both getting emotional right now. Let's let this rest for a bit. Let's put this down for a minute and come back. And maybe you need 5 minutes. Maybe you need 5 hours. Maybe you need a day. Right? Maybe that's what we all need to think about it so that we come back. But it's okay to say, let's let this rest for a little bit. Because an escalated adult cannot calm an escalated child. So if we become escalated, right, and now we're kind of spinning and whirling, and they're spinning and whirling, we've got this spinning, whirling thing, and that only keeps the spinning and whirling going on longer. The only way that we can calm our child is if we're calm ourselves. And it's okay that we get escalated sometimes. It's going to happen, right? Parenting makes us escalated a lot of times, right? We get escalated. And in those moments, we can tell them, look, I'm too mad to handle this the way that I want to right now. I'm going to need a minute. I'm going to just need a minute. Let me walk away. I'll come. Let me take a deep breath. Let me do some 4, 7, 8 breathing. Let me take a walk around the block. We'll come back to this. Right? The important thing is that we go back. We can't leave things hanging, right? We can't say, I'm going to take a minute, I'll come back to this, and then not come back to it. We have to make sure that we follow through and come back. Okay. But it is really okay for us to say, I need a minute. It's also okay if our kids tell us, I need a minute. That's cool. That's great. When our kids do that, we can respect that, because that's good modeling. That's really effective self-regulation. That's a really good thing for our kids to tell us. The thing is that we're not always going to get it right, though, right? We're just not going to always get it right. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. Tina Payne Bryson, who is one of my very favorite authors on child development, whole brain child development, in her brain, I was at a conference the other day with her, listening to her as one of the speakers, and she said that the very best parents only get it right about 30% of the time. Let that sink in a second. Only 30% of the time do the very best parents get it right. It's pretty amazing. To me, that was very, that gave me a sense of liberation and freedom and validation. Because, I mean, I'm not the worst parent. I'm not the greatest parent. But at least I feel like somewhere in there, I'm getting it right, you know, and it's okay that I'm getting it wrong more than I'm getting it right. What she said, though, the more important part was that as long as we make the repair, right, when we know we didn't get it right, the most important thing that we can do is go back and make the repair. Go back and say, hey, I didn't get that right. I apologize. Can we try this again? I don't like the way I handled that. I don't like the way I behaved a minute ago, an hour ago, whatever it was. I think can we try again? Can I try again? Will you give me another chance? Those moments can actually be really great for them and for our relationships. It builds connection, right? Because when we can be vulnerable with our kids can then see us as human and help, and that helps us to make that connection, right? That we're willing to admit our faults. It also lets our kids know people make mistakes. It happens all the time. It's never too late to go back and make a repair. I was talking to a friend not that long ago, and she was telling me that when her kid, who's now an adult, I think he's in his 30s, she said, you know, when he was a teenager, I gave him a really hard time about growing his hair long. She said, I really didn't like it, and I gave him a really hard time about it. She goes, and now I look back and think, why? Why did I do that? Like, I feel really like that was why I made him feel bad over something that really didn't matter in retrospect, right? And so I said, well, have you talked to him about that? And she said, no, but I think I'm gonna, because it's never too late to go back and say, I don't like the way I handled that, and I'm sorry. What an amazing opportunity to build connection with your even adult child, right? So it's never too late to go back and make that repair. The idea also is that we want connection over punishment. Prioritize connection over punishment. You know, punishment is intended, the intention of punishment is to make someone feel bad about what they did, right? We want them to pay for what they did. And punishment, if we haven't figured out what's below the surface, is not always effective unless we know what's happening. Consequences can be effective, right? Consequences are effective. Punishment, not so much. Go for that connection, because one of the things we can say is, I want you to feel safe telling me the truth. I'm going to try really hard to stay calm so that I can support you through this, right? I'm not mad at you. I'm just asking what happened because I want to be able to help you. Give me the opportunity. And the most important one, when you're honest with me, it tells me that you trust me. I am grateful for your honesty. Let them know how you're feeling. Let them know that you appreciate that they come and talk with us, right? And make it a safe space. That's compassionate parenting. Also remember that timing is everything. Being there, giving them constructive feedback. Maybe they're not ready for it now. That's okay. Give it later. Praise them for the effort, the heart that went into it, the worth of the person, not necessarily the outcome. And when people have done their best, whether it meets your standards is irrelevant, that's the time to give them appreciation and praise. So, for example, if one of your household standards is that your children make their bed, a 5-year-old is not going to be able to make their bed necessarily with beautiful hospital corners and everything straight, right? But if the effort is made and they've tried their hardest, right, taking into consideration their physical limitations, their knowledge, what they see, then we praise the effort, right? And then they will continue to get better. But if we put them down or point out their shortcomings, it makes people feel like they don't want to try anymore, right? Catch your kid being good. Find when catch them, right? Wow, you did it. Thank you for doing your best. Whatever it is. Oh gosh, you did a great job getting ready today. Now we're on time for school. This feels good. Thank you for your effort. Thanks for working there. So we want to find opportunities to praise them, because praise is going to get that behavior to be repeated more than shaming them because they did it wrong is going to get them to do it right next time. Got that? And in this way, we can help to avoid the shame spiral. Shame is a very heavy thing for a kid to carry around, for an adult to carry around. That is, excuse me, we want to avoid having our kids feel shamed, because we can't teach our kids to behave better by making them feel worse. When they feel better, that's when they'll behave better. And sometimes our kids say things to us that we're like, how do I answer this? Maybe they say things like, I'm so dumb, I don't know anything, right? And our response can be, not knowing means that we can learn something new, right? It's really great to learn. So it's great that you don't know. Like, that's kind of cool that you don't know, because now you can spend time learning. We actually learn more when we make mistakes or don't know, so that we have to look it up. When we do something right off the very first time, it does not help to strengthen the pathways and the connections that we need in order to make that part of our knowledge base, our memory base. Sometimes our kids say things like, this is too hard. You're right, it is really hard. It's a good thing you're a kid who can do hard things. You can keep trying. Maybe our kids say, this is frustrating. Well, learning is supposed to be difficult, uncomfortable, and frustrating. If it feels that way, you're doing it right. Keep working, kid. Keep working. I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. It's okay to take a break and take a breath. That's what I do when things get tricky for me, right? I go for a walk. I take a breath. I put it away for a little while. We'll come back to it when you're feeling, ready to attack it again. And then when we encourage our kids, we can say, hey, you're trying hard. You're building your working hard muscle. You're getting better all the time, and that's what really matters. The base of compassionate parenting is that what our kids really need the most from us is us. What your kids really need the most from you is just you, because we are made to connect. We are born to be in connection with one another, and we work best. Our brain function, productivity, our learning, our coping skills are all at their very best when we feel human connection. And what does that mean? It means bringing your whole attention and awareness when you're with your child. It means being really present with them. And I know there's a lot going on. We're all very busy. So as much as we can, make sure that when we are focusing on them, our whole attention is focused on them. And you don't have to be perfect. It's not possible to be perfect, so please don't aim for it, right? Perfection does not exist. All you have to do is show up. When you don't know how to respond in a given situation with your child, the most important thing is that you're there, that you say, I'm not sure how to respond to this right now. Give me a minute. Let me think about it, right? You're there with them. You're showing up. Oh, and did I mention that you don't have to be perfect? Yeah, I think I did, right? You don't have to be perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for connection, right? Being physically present and providing a quality of presence, right? Which means putting down our phone, which means looking at them, which means really being 100% present and listening. The best predictor of a child's happiness, of their emotional, social, academic outcomes, is that they have just one person in their life who shows up for them. This research is tried and true. The research when I was an undergrad, a child development undergrad, a long time ago, all the research was very clear that a child's trajectory can completely change if they have one adult who is there for them, who shows up for them, who connects with them. All these years later, more than 35 years later, new research is saying the same thing. It takes one adult in a child's life to completely change their trajectory. Be the one. And you don't have to be perfect in order to be the one. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to show up. So what does that look like? What does real connection look like? We know that in order to feel secure, we all need to feel safe, seen, and soothed. So providing safety means that our kids feel protected and sheltered from harm, physical, emotional, and relational harm. We are that person who they know they can come to us, and we are going to make sure that they have a safe environment, that we advocate for them when outside environment is not safe for them, and that we are their safe harbor. When they come to us, they know that they will be protected and taken care of. That doesn't mean that we won't check them on behavior if that's what needs to happen, but it does mean that we will do it respectfully and in a very safe environment. And then our kids need to be seen. We all need to make sure we're seen, that we care about them. We care about their emotions. We care whatever they're feeling, we want to know, and that we recognize they have those emotions, right? We go, oh, I see that this is something for you. And then we soothe our kids, right? It's our job to make sure that we are there for them when they're hurting, whatever that might look like. Maybe it's holding hands. Maybe it's talking it out. Maybe it's just letting them know I'm here for you and I really appreciate who you are, right? That's soothing. And when we can make sure our kids are seen and safe and soothed, then they know that they'll feel secure and connected. I know that you'll keep me safe. I know that you'll soothe me. I know that you'll see me. You are predictable. I can count on you. You're going to be there every time. When they have all of that lined up, excuse the dog barking, I'm so sorry. They feel at home in the world, right? I know where I belong. I know where I fit in. And then they can help. And when they know where they belong and they feel at home in the world, they can then begin to help themselves to feel seen and safe and soothe. That's really the goal, is for us to start and for them to take it over. And a big part of that is making sure we are honoring the fact that their brain development that matters. Where they're at in their brain development makes a difference. But we want them to be able to use all the parts of their brain. And when they feel secure, it opens up the ability for them to get to their thinking, learning brain. They don't have to be caught in their emotional brain. When we lead with compassion, our kids are happier, they're more fulfilled, they are more successful emotionally, they have more meaningful relationships, they do better academically because they are in that thinking, learning part of their brain. They're able to access the thinking, learning part of their brain. And when that happens, parenting also becomes easier. It's easier to parent a kid who's feeling safe because they're in a place where they can use their problem-solving brain. What does this look like? Give me a minute can be seen. Like, I recognize that you're having a hard time right now. What do you need? I need a minute. I can listen to you to help you feel safe without judgment. And I understand what you need. And then I can help to provide that for you. And that's soothing. How do we connect? We connect with our kids by apologizing when we mess up, by being there for them, listening and not judging when they're talking, when they're trying to share with us. Be present. Try not to rescue them. So hard as a parent to not want to rescue our kids, right? We want to jump in and save the day, right? With our cape and the super parent and run in and rescue them. That's not always the best thing to do for them. Sometimes we have to give it a minute and let them try to figure it out on their own. Like, that's how they can develop those problem-solving skills. Acknowledge that they're having big feelings. Try not to ask too many questions or get hooked. What does getting hooked mean? Getting hooked is when your child comes to you with something, and instead of helping them to remain regulated and connected up and ready to problem solve, we get into the problem with them, right? Oh, Mom, I'm so mad because John stepped on my shoes at recess today. And instead of saying, oh, wow, what did you do about that? How did you handle that? What can we do? What do you need? We say, are you kidding me? That kid stepped on your shoes. I'm going to call mom. I'm going to call teacher, that kid, blah, blah, blah. Right? That's getting hooked, is when we get into the problem and match their response. Our job as parents is not to get hooked or so hard. Our job as parents is to help them to problem solve, to help them to understand and what happened and how they handled it and how they want to handle things like that in the future. When we show up, our kids feel safe. And then they operate from that place of belonging in the world. When things don't go their way, they know that things are still okay. They still have a place where they belong. And that helps them to stay in that thinking, learning part of their brain, right? Instead of getting caught up in their midbrain, their emotional brain. So when they know that we are there, it helps to smooth things out for them. They don't get thrown off by a great challenge. It doesn't throw them off quite as far. It might throw them off a little, and that's okay. We need that to happen in order for them to learn and figure things out and problem solve and develop executive function. But it also, when they know that they're connected with us, it doesn't also cause them to completely feel like they're lost, right? They smooth things out a little bit for them. Empathy is never a problem. There's never a situation where empathy is not the answer. Empathy is helping another person to feel felt. And when we exhibit empathy, when we practice empathy in our families, our kids become more empathetic, right? They stay connected up and they become more empathetic. And a little bit of empathy goes a long, long way. When we use empathy or lead with empathy, we put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. We do our best to understand their feelings. We accept those feelings non-judgmentally, and then we communicate understanding. Without exception, empathy is always appropriate, always. Remember too that our kids are trying. They are still learning to resist temptation. And when we insist that something absolutely has to be done our way, we both lose. Everybody ends up unhappy. And even more importantly, we don't give our kids the opportunity to exercise the solving part of their brain so that they can continue to grow and become better problem solvers on their own independently. We can also look beyond, in order to be more compassionate, look beyond their behavior and kind of look beyond, like, is something else causing this? And HALT, I know that doesn't translate to Spanish very well, but this was a preschool thing that we used all the time, because we always, before we tried to problem solve with a child, we always thought, okay, are they hungry? Because if you're hungry, you're not, and you're kind of one of those people that gets grumpy when you get hungry, you're not going to be a great problem solver, right? You're not going to be able to get calm and really respond appropriately. So if a kid's hungry, let's not try to problem solve. If they're angry, then again, brain is involved in a different way, not going to work. Lonely or tired. So if we can look at those 4 things first, and if any of those 4 things are in place, then we have to meet the need before we can problem solve, right? Before we can do whatever needs to be done in the next. And we can ask our kids, what would be helpful? So often we forget that we can ask our kids for their, like, maybe they know, maybe they don't, but maybe they know, like, this is what I need right now from you, Mom. This is what I need from you right now. And if we ask that before we try to jump in and problem solve for them, not only do we give them the message that they are in control and that makes them feel powerful, but we also give them the opportunity to solve that problem on their own, right? And again, practice that. What would be helpful? These are some things that we can say in order to make sure that we're leading with compassion. I can see you're having a hard time right now. What can I do for you, right? How can I help? How can I be here for you? Let them know, I'm okay, I'm here for you. Maybe that means I need to walk away, especially with our older kids, our teenagers perhaps, right? Okay, I'm here for you when you're ready to talk. I'm gonna walk away right now, but I'm here for you. I'm not walking away from you. I'm walking away to give you space, right? And I think letting them know that I love you even when you feel your worst, even when you're not having a great day, even when things aren't going well, I love you no matter what. We all as people need 12 hugs a day. 12 hugs a day does not necessarily mean that I want you to walk around with a clipboard and every time you hug your kid, make a little mark on that clipboard at night, go, well, I only got 10 in today. I'll have to make sure I get 14 tomorrow because I missed out on 2. That's not what I'm saying. Hugs can be very different, right? We think about love languages and so hugs can be physical, a physical hug. Hugs can be verbal. Hey, I see how hard you're working and I really appreciate it. Verbal hug. A visual hug, a Post-it note left on their notebook. I love you. Have a great day. Good luck on that math test, right? Visual hug. An environmental hug might be leaving maybe something that they like, changing their environment a little bit. One of the example for me is when my daughter comes to visit, which she doesn't live with us anymore, but which is good for her. But I put flowers in her room when she comes to stay with us, right? To let her know I'm prepared. I was looking forward to you being here. I was preparing for you, and I want you to know that I love you. That's right. That's an environmental hug. Acts of service could be, hey, I see how hard you're working to study tonight, and I know it's your day to take the trash out or do the dishes or whatever. I'm going to do that for you today because I want you to know that I really appreciate how hard you're studying. You keep studying. I'm going to take care of this for you. And then quality time, one-on-one time with our kids is so important, and it makes them feel it's special and important and invested in. So do what you can to spend that one-on-one time with your kid. It doesn't have to be a whole day. It doesn't have to be even a whole hour necessarily. But just, hey, you want to go grab a cup of, you want to go get a, I don't know, Slurpee. You want to go kick the ball around for a little while. Hey, I'm going to go for a walk. You want to take a walk with me? Let's go take the dog for a walk. Quality time together, those few minutes, play a game, do a puzzle, invest in what they like to do. If you know they like to do something, say, hey, let's go do that together, right? So cool. And those are all ways that we can hug our kids and each other, to be honest. The idea is that we want the message to be, I love you. You are a person of infinite worth. And I know that sometimes the behavior that I don't like is just a tiny part of who you are, but I still love all of who you are, right? Just because you do things sometimes I don't like doesn't mean I don't love you. Doesn't mean I love you any less. It's just, and if you do amazing things, doesn't mean I'm gonna love you more. I love you no matter what. So sometimes we need to just get a little bit what we call grounded. We need to feel comfortable where we are. We need to feel present. When those moments when we want to be really present with our kids, but our brains are kind of going outside the room. We're somewhere else. We're thinking about work, or we're thinking about chores, or family obligations, right? But we really want to be focused and present in the room. We can use a grounding exercise. So I'm going to lead you through this grounding exercise as our final exercise of the day. So first thing I'm going to ask you is get comfy where you are. I know that some, I do this one a lot, so some of the staff might be like, oh, here we go again. But that's a good thing. The more we practice, the better we get at grounding ourselves. So do this one as often as possible. So the first thing is I'm going to ask you to, just from where you're sitting, look around and notice 5 things. Just notice 5 things that are around you. Next, I want you to, just from where you're sitting, notice 4 things that you could touch, 4 things that have a texture, 4 things you could get up and squeeze or touch. What 3 things can you hear right now, just from where you're sitting or standing? What are 3 things you can hear right here? Thankfully, I can't hear my dog barking anymore. Are there 2 things you can smell? You can still smell my coffee. Maybe you have a candle burning or someone's cooking something. One thing that you could taste. One thing that you can taste. Again, I have my coffee. When we talk about taste, it could also be ice cold water. Don't underestimate the power of having some ice cold water to make you present in the moment, right? It's a full sensation thing, right? That cold iciness, you can taste it, you can swallow it. Cold water speaks to our midbrain. It speaks to that emotional part of our brain and helps to calm it. Also, when we are learning new things, we need twice as much water as we do in other circumstances. And right now, especially, we are all learning new things every day. So drink plenty of water. Take care, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Because if we're going to really show up to be compassionate parents, it takes work, right? It takes a lot of energy. So we need to take care of ourselves by eating well, getting good sleep, using compassion and forgiveness in our lives in respect to ourselves, in regard to ourselves, right? Understand that this is hard and you're going to make mistakes, and we have to learn to let it go, make the repair and let it go. Compassion and forgiveness for yourself. Meditation or mindfulness, which is why I practice this all the time, is such a great way to exercise self-care. Exercise does not mean you need to get involved in like a really major exercise program or go get a gym membership. All that, we need to just move a little bit. When we move, we get all the parts of our brain working together. And so exercise, even if it's a walk around the block or a walk around the coffee table, right? It's something. And what we're doing when we're compassionate parenting is we're helping our kids to gain emotional intelligence. We're helping ourselves to increase our emotional intelligence, which helps us to be that person who's a responsive person instead of a reactive person. And what we can do for our kids is be who we needed. Be the kid, be the parent, the adult you needed when you were younger, or you wanted, right? What would you have wanted? Put yourself in that person's shoes. That's really compassionate parenting. Okay, thank you so much for joining us and being here and listening in on our recording. A lot of information today. That was a lot of slides. Gabby was working hard over there on the Spanish channel, I know. So thank you all so much. And we will see you next week to continue our more in-depth about what we can do, the components of compassionate parenting. So have a great week, everybody.